Okay, and now, back again. We are now going to talk about a new movie that came out in 2023, The Caine Mutiny Court Martial. All right, which is, I guess, a Paramount Plus original, and I guess it goes back to being based on the stage play, The Caine Mutiny Court Martial, which came out back in 1953, I believe. There's also a 1988 made-for-TV movie of the Caine Mutiny Court Martial, and that's basically, this movie is basically coming off our last review of the Caine Mutiny. This is basically a elongated movie that just focuses on the Navy trial court-martial scene, and they just make a whole movie out of that. What do you think of? What are your thoughts on this one? Anything to say at the start? Did you like it?
So here's the thing. I did like it, but I'm willing to admit when there's movies I like, which I think are not great. In a lot of ways, I'd be very curious to talk to someone who had never seen the original, because it's hard to parse how this movie would have, if I did not understand a lot more from the original story, it's hard for me to really parse how the movie would have played with me. That's just my thought out of the gate.
Okay, so my thoughts on the movie were indifferent to pretty positive at times. At times it was like so-so, but then there are moments where I actually really did like it. Then after it was over, it was like, okay, that was a thing. I'll just say that this movie was written and directed by William Friedkin, the director of, The Exorcist. Although I'm pretty sure this is more of like a commissioned film, like Paramount Plus needed something, and they're like, "Hey, William Friedkin, could you please direct this Caine Mutiny Court Martial film?" That's the impression I got. It wasn't exactly his love child. It was something that had to be done. People needed paychecks. Yeah. So
I could see. So if that's true, then in some ways I'm more impressed with it, because I thought all the actors actually did a pretty good job. I actually really liked Kiefer Sutherland's performance. I thought he played a very compelling guy descending into madness kind of thing, or like becoming unhinged in front of everyone.
It was Kiefer Sutherland doing a very good Humphrey Bogart impression, I guess.
Well, I feel like he nailed it. I thought he did a good job. I put it this way, again, because I have the back. There was things in it which I felt just did not work at all.
Okay.
But Kiefer Sutherland's performance is not one.
Okay, so so going back to the Caine Mutiny movie, basically in that movie, for the court room dramas portion, everything is going against Lieutenant Merrick?
Yes.
Everything's pretty much going against him until the very end, when Captain Queeg basically gets exposed as being mentally not well. This movie, from closer to the beginning, they're pretty much on even ground, and Captain Queeg is honestly made to look pretty bad pretty early on, I thought. So there wasn't this tension that Lieutenant Merrick was going to lose. It was a little strange because there's moments. Okay, so there are certain people put on trial as witnesses who are supposed to be defending Captain Queeg, but they kept saying things like, well, yes, he does have some mental problems that would happen. I'm like, okay, I thought you're here to be a witness to defend him, not expose him. Were you thinking that?
No. So I think one of the interesting things that if people like courtroom dramas, I think one thing which is going to throw them is that a military court-martial does not necessarily play out the same. There's a lot more theater to civilian courts than there are military courts, and you even see it that you have the judge played by Lance Reddick. You see, like, he actually intervenes at times and directly asks his own questions, something that you wouldn't really see in a civilian court.
Okay, so as a civilian, that interested me. Is that something that they do in military courts?
Okay, so first I'm going to be honest. I've never been to a court martial, so I can't tell you what they actually look like. But I did notice both in the original Caine Mutiny and the new one, the 2023 Caine Mutiny Court Martial, I did notice that they both had the judge being a lot more interfering than you'd see in a civilian court. So honestly, I can't tell you. I can tell you what I know about what I've read about court martials. That there's multiple types of court martials you can have, and generally, instead of like you still have a selection process for the jury, but you could also see that the jury was up there with the judge. I don't know whether the judge also acts as a jury member, but they get high-ranking officers who like are the jury. You got to convince them. But I'm just saying, not everything is quite the same. You're not going to have paid professional witnesses like in civilian courts in the same way. So when you have the psychiatrists on the stand, it's like their job is to actually give their professional opinion, not to defend one person or the other. Now they might have a vested interest in saying one thing over the other, but the idea is they're not going to lie or anything.
Okay.
So then the whole point of the psychiatrists were trying to say whenever they try to get cornered, they would say, yes, in point of fact, he is diagnosed with these issues, but everyone's diagnosed with some issue. The only question is, do these issues disable him from being a captain or not? I don't think it was necessarily a problem.
Right.
I do get that. I can see where you didn't get the same tension as the original.
Yeah. Okay. So one thing, because you talked about they love to dramatize. They love to cheat a lot with courtroom dramas and do things they don't actually do. I'm pretty sure. Okay, so in the original movie, Captain Queeg only comes to the stand one time. In this movie, they have him come to the stand twice, like once in the beginning, so we can be introduced to Kiefer Sutherland, to Captain.
Right,
Queeg.
they rewrite the order of the courtroom appearances.
Yeah, my understanding is I watched a video on this one time, and maybe this isn't entirely true, but I was told that courtrooms frown upon having anyone called to the stand twice or multiple times. It's like he should be called to the stand, questions should be asked, he's done. And I guess if lawyers say, I want to call this person back again, it's like, what? Why? And it's like just something that's like, it's not that it can't happen, but it's very frowned upon.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, I'm sorry. Again, civilian courts, I only know what I see from movies, but the judge always asks, or the lawyer will often say, I reserve the right to recall this witness at a later time. And I constantly see that in courtroom movies, so I don't know. I have no reference for how frowned down upon it is to have someone take the stand more than once.
Whatever. The point was they needed to have Kiefer Sutherland show his face at the beginning just so we know what the character is, and then they need to have him come back again at the end.
Right.
I found this movie humorous at parts. Did you laugh at all?
No.
There's the moment, I don't know if this was okay, so there's there's some guy who's I think some kind of a medical professional who is slightly effeminate, we'll just say. And Jason Clarke's character is grilling him on something, and he's like, you said that the captain was sick, and he's like, calling someone thick is polarizing and terrible. He said, it was like, he talked about the list, but I just started to laugh.
I don't even remember that part.
Okay, maybe it just stuck out to me. I thought it was commenting on like the military becoming a bit not what it once was or something.
Okay, I actually was a little bit curious about that throughout. I was trying to figure out what I was thinking to myself, like, I wonder if there's any commentary here with all the talk of like mental illness and stuff like that, and different psychiatrists being brought in.
Oh yeah, I wasn't thinking about that in terms of a current day commentary, but maybe it was.
Well, I mean, the original one, they have a psychiatrist too, but I don't know, something interesting. It just like rubbed me a certain way. Did wonder about that. Moving on, like a lot of the things, I felt like it's an interesting idea to say, okay, well, we know the story of the Caine Mutiny. What would the courtroom drama look like if you were a bystander? You know, if you were a Navy public relations officer or something who was there in the courtroom, or one of the guards or something, and you have no clue what happened, and you just have to witness it in real time. And I think that's an interesting idea, but I think there's a lot of places that take away from the depth of the original story, including in the original Caine Mutiny. You literally get to see the comms officer, what is his name, Lieutenant Kiefer, I want to say.
Yes.
Yeah, you literally get to see him manipulate things all along the way and sow the seeds of doubt in the executive officer, in Lieutenant Merrick's mind, concerning that the captain may be crazy and needs to be relieved. And you see him constantly working these things. So when the lawyer confronts him about it and like throws his drink all over him and essentially like calls him a horrible human being and a coward, it's like, you know that's true because you've seen it. Where in this one, the lawyer, you have the same theoretical payoff where the lawyer says, you know, you have the executive officer, he didn't know anything about mental illness, so where did he get the idea? It was you, wasn't it? And he addresses the comms officer and talks about how he went through all this and planted these ideas, but you as the watcher haven't seen any of that. It's kind of shocking. You wouldn't know where the lawyer learned any of that or how he came upon that information. So it doesn't have the same...
It wasn't...
I feel like I would just have been kind of lost.
They didn't...
If I was watching that and I had not seen the original, I would not know what the lawyer was talking about.
Yeah, I thought of that also. They didn't punctuate the point as clearly as the original story, the original movie.
Not just they didn't punctuate it as clearly, but you don't have any evidence that any of that's true, right? And you wouldn't even know where the lawyer, like, how the lawyer found that out. Like, in the movie, the second the comms officer, Lieutenant Kiefer, takes the stand, you realize that this man is the type of guy Dante would have thrown in the bottom of hell. He's a betrayer. He betrayed the trust of the executive officer and of Ensign Keith, who in the new one, he's a lieutenant. But anyways, the original one, Keith, he literally betrays them to save his own hide because he's not quite sure how the court-martial's going to go.
Ensign Kiefer, you said Keith just now.
No, Keith is the ensign. So Keith is the young guy, the one who sides with the executive officer.
Okay.
Kiefer is the comms officer.
Okay, sorry, I've been mixing them up.
Yep, I mixed them up too. But in other words, so in the original one, you know the comms officer is a bad person when he takes the stand. You see, like, he's going to save his own hide and not stand up for what happened.
Yeah.
He's going to pretend like he completely doesn't know what happened. He even, like, borderline at least lies by omission when they talk about the whole scene where they went to the aircraft carrier to report that they thought Captain Kui was mentally unbalanced, needed to be relieved, and Lieutenant Kiefer retells the story as if he was always against it.
Yeah. Okay, so
where it's like it was actually his idea, right? So I'm just saying, 2023 version, that doesn't play out at all. It's not just, it's not as strong. I think it completely misses.
Well,
and I think that's a very important part of the story. And the movie still tries to have that payoff, that Lieutenant Kiefer was the cad the whole time, but you don't have any evidence of that.
Yeah, allow me to say just how little sense it made. In the original movie, they're having their party for having won the trial, and Kiefer shows up, and Merrick's like, I didn't think you'd have the guts to show up. And he's like, well, I just didn't think I had the guts not to, or something. And then at this movie, after it's all over, Merrick tells Jason Clarke, the lawyer, he's like, so, hey, Kiefer's gonna have a party for his new book, wanna go? And Jason Clarke's like, you wanna go to your friend's party? He's like, well, yeah. Wait, your friend just threw you under the bus. He's like, why would you want to go to his party?
Right, except we don't know that the friend threw him under the bus.
But then at the end, it seemed to be that he did.
Right, because the lawyer says he was the one who planted all the ideas of dissent against the captain the whole time.
I don't know. How does the lawyer know that?
How does the lawyer know that?
We, as the audience, never saw that happen. The lawyer seems to know it happened. How did he know that happened? I don't know. You could have here's the way you could have done it. You could have had a couple out of the scene. Like you have a few of those scenes outside the classroom throughout the movie. Sorry, outside of the courtroom.
Yeah.
Where Merrick and the lawyer are talking. For some reason I can't remember the lawyer's name. But you could have had a couple scenes like that with the lawyer questioning him and learning a few of these things. You could have had some evidence of it. I thought.
Right.
I didn't think they did a good job. My other big issue was some of the other things which did not play as well. It wasn't clear that Kiefer Sutherland's Captain Queeg had PTSD. Like, he, as a matter of fact, may just be a crazy person. It's not clear what his previous record was. Like, in the original one, they were very clear that he had been through some action. And they were very suggestive of the fact that when you've come close to death, like, he was actually rattled by the things he had been through. In the new one, again, if you kind of avoid all that, then it's not clear. It wasn't clear to me that Queeg was as tragic of a character, because it wouldn't be clear to me that Queeg was ever a good Navy officer who was kind of like ruined by,
Right, yeah.
ruined by enough elements of
Yep,
war or
that
anything.
was not.
That may be true in the movie, but it never really came up. But they still have the line, like, yeah, Queeg was already, before 9/11, because the new one takes place in the modern days. It's like, before 9/11, he had already joined the Navy. He was one of those people who was out there before everyone else, decided to get on board with joining the military. But you're still not quite sure whether Queeg, maybe he's just a coward. Like, in the new one. Or maybe he has all these personality disorders. I don't know. But, like, in the new one, it's not clear
Right.
that Queeg was a man who, like, needed help to get himself together, or whether he was someone who never should have joined the Navy to begin with. Like,
Right.
I don't know. That was part of the tragedy. The old one is that the guy needed help and nobody would help him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
The guy needed to build bonds of trust, and the lawyer in the old one, the Humphrey Bogart one, the lawyer suggests if you had reciprocated his plea for help, then you could have built bonds of trust, and then in the case of a storm, he probably would have listened to you. He probably would let you take the calm. Whatever it was, he didn't have anybody to rely on.
Yep.
And it's like, you miss all of that in the new one. You don't know what's wrong with Queeg, why Queeg's messed up. None of that stuff is clear.
Yep. I actually remembered one more moment that I actually really liked in the new one.
Yep.
Was because there's a thing where I guess Merrick talks about how after Queeg was removed and they got away from the cyclone, Captain Queeg talked to him in private and is like, "Hey, we can wipe the logs clear. We can say it didn't happen, so there's no blemish on either of our records." And then Merrick turns him down, and then saying like, "Well, it's already been recorded in so many logs, and it would be illegal to change things, whatever." And then whenever Captain Queeg is questioned about that, and Captain Queeg's like, "Well, it's not the first time that people have, subtly changed logs. Not the biggest infringement on the rules." And like everybody in the courtroom like groans, and there's this sense of like, oh gosh, this just threw a whole nother monkey wrench into this trial that we just don't want to have to address.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that would have happened in a real military court, but the reaction from everyone was exactly how I felt, like in that moment, and
Right.
I had a laugh at the reaction.
So back when we did the
I mean, you don't have to go on a huge tangent about all that, okay? But I just thought that moment was nailed.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, so we did the original Caine Mutiny. We've done the new Caine Mutiny, but at the end of the original, we went over the things that we still had critiques about. Like, I just can't get over what I consider poor soundtracks. But I will say, for the new one, there were some things I did like. So I mentioned I really liked Kiefer Sutherland's performance. I thought he gave a very compelling
performance of a man kind of falling apart in front of your face, who's very mentally unwell. I really like, and maybe I just like Lance Riddick, God rest his soul, but Lance Riddick as the judge. It's kind of a outside of the John Wick series. He generally plays like these higher authority types. He's
Right.
almost like typecast in those positions. But I actually think he does a good job at it. In this one, I thought Lance Riddick did a really good job as the judge, constantly portraying, because again, they don't have as much of the movie to go off of. They just have the courtroom scene, pushing home that this is a super serious situation, and like Big Navy doesn't want Merrick to be right because of the ramifications. Like, you can't have people thinking they can just relieve their captain of command, whenever they want, which, makes it so serious that to a certain extent, everyone's going to be on Captain Queeg's side starting off. Like, the judge's job and the jury's job, who are all these like higher ranking officers, is to protect the Navy at all costs, which means they kind of need Merrick to be guilty of mutiny. That's what they would rather. They would rather it's exactly what it seems like, and that Merrick's guilty of mutiny because of the serious ramifications of what it means if he's not, which is a lower officer relieving a higher officer. Even if it's technically legal, no one actually wants to ever see it happen. But Lance Reddick had to bring the audience up that this is a super serious situation.
Yes.
And I thought they did a good job with that for what it was.
Yeah, I would say him, Kiefer Sutherland as Commander Queeg, Jason Clarke as Lieutenant Greenwald, the defense attorney, and Jake Lacey as Lieutenant Merrick. I have no idea what Jake Lacey is in, but he nailed whatever it was he had to do to be this guy under...
I feel like I've seen him in other stuff.
I know I have, but I'm just going to address, I thought all those actors pulled this movie through.
Okay, I'm also going to give a shout out. I don't know who the actor was, but the guy who played Lieutenant, again, in the original one, it was Ensign Keith. In the new one, it's Lieutenant Keith. He's the one officer. He's the junior officer who was on the executive officer side.
Right.
He's like the other guy who might go down for mutiny, might get executed for mutiny, and I thought he did a very good job. Again, in this one, he's not even important. He's just like an afterthought. But when he's on the stand, he played a good job of a junior officer who doesn't have the wisdom all he knows is what he thinks he saw. He knows that he didn't like the captain. He knows that he liked the executive officer, Merrick. And he played kind of youthful ignorance well.
Right. I think basically all the actors did a good job. They are the ones who did the best for this film.
Right.
All right, let's wind it down now. Any last thoughts at all? Do you recommend the Caine Mutiny Court Martial?
No, because I think it fails at the much deeper and more emotionally impactful story and point that the original Caine Mutiny, both the book and the movie, brought about very well.
Yeah, I agree. Like it was essentially doing the same point for the modern day, but they sputter out so fast at the end, and they cut the credits, and it's like
there was too many missing elements.
Yeah, I would say you won't.
If you want to see some good acting, it was pretty good acting. But
yeah, you won't.
You
won't be bored if you watch it. I think I wasn't bored with the movie.
No. I think that's right.
It was okay. All right, I think that's all we have to say for that one. All right.
All right. Signing off then.
Yep. Yeah. Have a good night, everyone.
Take care.